How's it going, everybody? My name is Joshua, and I think it's time that I make some kind of video about my story, where I've come from, and what got me to this point. So, I guess I'll start back from the earliest point in my life that I really remember, and that is my parents' divorce. Back in 2014, my parents got divorced. My mother got custody because in the state of Massachusetts, as I'm sure it is just about everywhere in the United States, the mother gets primary custody because the father is usually seen as the harmful one to the child. So my father got kicked out of the house. He had to pay child support. And my mother, was the primary caretaker. She got the house, et cetera, et cetera. And this kind of began my severe battle with depression. I was diagnosed with adjustment disorder as a kid, which is, if you guys don't know, if I remember correctly, it's some kind of depression, anxiety mix of a couple of other emotions, basically pressed on by traumatic events. So I was diagnosed with that. I was offered SSRIs, but I didn't take any of them because I had seen what happened with my mother. And she, after the divorce, began carrying this severe depression as well and fell into a plethora of prescribed medication, which really led to her ultimate downfall. And this kind of spiraled my depression even more. I came to school every single day, super depressed. I lost all of my friends that I'd had for throughout elementary school. I had no friends in middle school whatsoever, really, besides maybe one. And my mother began having these serious manic episodes where she'd have to go to the police. I'd have to stay with my uncle because my father wasn't around, because he got kicked out of the house. And then she'd come back and we'd pretend everything was normal again. And in this kind of multitude of stuff, again, I was battling a lot of my depression because of my friendships too. I can recall a time or two times with one of my friends at the time, and for the sake of privacy, we'll call him Jake. Just call him Jake. And Jake was a very troubled kid. His father told him that his mother died of cancer when he was young, and I never really believed that. I just had this gut feeling. And anyways, I went over to Jake's place one night, watched Family Guy, had pizza. It was going to be like a regular sleepover kind of thing. My mom was out partying with her boyfriend at the time. And all of a sudden, Jake's dad's girlfriend, I should probably name these people, but I'm not going to do that. Jake's dad's girlfriend got pulled out on a stretcher because she went unconscious, and Jake's dad was freaking out. And anyways, the ambulance left, etc. We were told to go to bed, and before I go to bed, I peer into Jake's dad's room, and I see like a small little pile on his nightstand of like an off-white powder, and I already knew what that was. And I went to bed with Jake, and not with him specifically, but I took the top bunk, he took the bottom bunk. Couldn't sleep all night, and at about 1 something in the morning, I still remember, there was a huge bang on the door for a couple minutes, and Jake's dad went to open it, and it was these people conversing. Didn't know who it was, but they were saying, like, give me the kid. And Jake's dad walked me out, and it was the police. So they took me into the car, and we had like this long talk in the police station at like 5 until 5 in the morning. And then my mother came, picked me up. And that kind of started this whole situation with this kid, Jake, at school, who I always saw this dark side of, and he portrayed himself as some kind of like loving, funny kid, but I just knew he wasn't. He was very troubled. Another instance with this kid was, I went over his place one time, and he was super, super pissed. He was super angry because his dad had allegedly sold his Xbox for gas money. His grandmother was with us. She was like sitting in the chair in the backyard. And in Jake's anger, he decided to pick up an axe that was just laying on the ground, kind of between his lawn and the neighbor's lawn because he lived in like a multifamily, like a wide multifamily. I'm not sure what you call that. Maybe it's a multifamily. Picked it up, started chopping down like small trees in like the woods area right behind his lawn. And I was trying to tell him to stop. His grandmother wouldn't do anything at all. And went over to try to stop him. And he took me by the throat and put the axe to my throat. And I thought my life flashed before my eyes. I thought it was going to be the end, but I pushed him away, ran home, and I told my mother and my father, and not at the same time because they weren't together, but neither of them believed me, and this kind of perpetuated my trauma as a young kid. So I further began therapy. Didn't take SSRI still because I'd seen that my mother was taking them, and she was developing these manic episodes, and was diagnosed with some kind of bipolar depression. And for a long time, I still had no friends, and I still couldn't fit in anywhere. And I recall one time as well, back in 7th grade, kind of towards the end, my mother had a very severe episode again, and I had to live with my uncle for a pretty extended amount of time. And he was driving me. He was taking me in custody from like an hour away to school every single day. He'd drive back, go to work, come pick me up, and then drive back with both of us. And this was happening for a while because, my dad didn't have custody. And then later that year in 7th grade, my father, my mother had a court appointment again. And the courts finally realized that, maybe your mother isn't a very stable motherly figure. Maybe your father should have custody. And keep in mind, my father isn't a perfect human being either, and my mother isn't some devil, so please don't think of her that way. I love her to death today. And I went to stay with my father, who lived in this shitty mill building in Pawtucket, Rhode Island at the time. Just 35, 40 minutes from where I was living in Massachusetts, right on the Rhode Island border. And he decided to have custody of me from the court's order. Lived in this shitty mill building for a couple months. He would drive me to school every single day, to my town and back. And I had no life. It was just video games and him and I hanging out sometimes doing nothing. He liked to call it killing time. Killing time. I wanted it to be spending time, but, there was not much that we did, unfortunately, which I kind of regret. And eventually, he's like, you know what, I should probably move back to the town that you're living in so you can go to school. So in 8th grade, we decided to move back to my old town. We got an apartment together at the north side of the town we were living in, or I was living in for most of my life, and continued on to 8th grade. And the relationship with my father and mother kind of switched roles. So instead of seeing my mother full-time and seeing my father part-time, I was seeing my father full-time and seeing my mother part-time. And, she'd come and see me on weekends or whatever. And she'd be just very sedated. The medication would just kind of sedate her, and she'd be like half dead, just really sucks. Not sure what kind of medication it is, never really looked into it, but she's never been the same person ever again. Anyways, 8th grade, my life kind of changed. I decided after doing martial arts my entire life, almost being a black belt in karate, not quite brown belt, couple levels, but didn't make it to black. After doing that, I was like, you know what? I think it's time to get out of my comfort zone. So I joined the football team in 8th grade, which in my particular town, 8th grade to 12th grade was the high school curriculum. The whole education system was kind of messed up there. So your usual 5th to 8th grade wasn't middle school. Middle school for me was, 6th to 8th grade for you. I think it was 4th, 5th to 7th for me. And then high school was 8th to 12th. So went to high school, even though it was still middle school, 8th grade. And joined the football team. And I was super late to the first day of practice. I had noticed all the kids running on the field doing like laps or warming up and whatnot, and I was just scared shitless. I was like, I do not want to do this whatsoever. Just because I hadn't really taken myself out of my comfort zone at all. But finally joined, even though late, and that started my journey in the football team. And then I started lifting weights very rigorously. I'd already been lifting weights for a little bit, on and off, in like 6th grade, but it wasn't very official until about 7th grade, like right before I started doing football. And after 8th grade, we decided that we should move to a different town because I should have a fresh start. So my dad got a girlfriend, and she's like, hey, I live in this town. Why don't you guys come live in the town next to me, because their school system's really good. The football team is really good. We're like, perfect. So packed up everything, moved out to this new town, also in Massachusetts, for 9th and 10th grade, which was a very expensive town and probably could not afford it, considering my dad had literally just retired. He had no source of income besides his retirement check, whatever you want to call it. And he was living off of that, trying to support him and I, and also this girlfriend he picked up. And 9th grade passed by, and I realized that she wasn't really a great person. So some things happened between all of us and that girlfriend, and we just kind of didn't talk to her anymore, because she was trying to weirdly get custody of me after knowing her for like 2 months, and then like leaving my dad. It was super fucking weird. But anyways, we kind of like left her and stayed in this town. I went to high school here, 9th and 10th grade. Great school system, and I tried desperately to fit in. The football team was great. Education was great. Didn't mind it at all. But I still just couldn't really build up those solid friendships and those foundations I was really looking for, those meaningful connections. I never got invited to any parties or anything because, well, I didn't party anyways. I've never really partied at all, or, drinking or smoking. I don't like doing that stuff. But, these people had already established their clique groups, for all of their life. I was just avoided and ostracized. It was like my old town all over again. But I just kept on moving forward, and I had decided that, maybe I was just destined to not have any friends. Maybe it just was the way it was. Long story short, 9th and 10th grade kind of passed by. It was the same rhythm as 8th grade. Like, things were happening very similarly. I was still seeing my mother part-time. And then something happened in May of 2021. Right after, or I think right before, school had ended. Sorry, my camera turned off. It was right after my sophomore year, May of 2021, something happened, and my father got a stroke. It was the day right after his father had passed, so my grandfather. And I didn't realize that he was having a stroke. I just saw some signs, and he wasn't really speaking full sentences, and half of his face was very droopy. And I was like, oh shit, I just learned about the signs of a stroke in my health class, and I'm like, fuck, I should probably call an ambulance. So picked up the phone, called 911, and they ran me through the signs. I'm like, yep, he's got all of them, and they told me to tell him this phrase, and he couldn't complete the phrase. Anyways, they came, pulled him out, and he was staying in the hospital for quite some time in the town next to where I was in Massachusetts. Saw him a couple days a week in the hospital, and it turned out he had a blood clot in his brain. Yeah, so that fucking sucked. And I was seeing my mother as well. She was kind of just coming over my apartment and taking care of me because I was still a minor, even though it was me and my dad's apartment. And eventually he was good enough to get out of the hospital, and he had this physical therapist or this mental therapist for about a month, or maybe it was like a week or two. I think it was a week or two. Yeah. And to kind of like build up his neuroplasticity. And, for a long time, it wasn't helping. And after the free neuroplasticity therapist kind of stopped her work, he was basically advised to, continue on with this therapy so he could build up back to where he was again. And he didn't. All he did was just kind of sleep and watch TV and just waste away on the couch. And I was devastated. I'm like, my father is never going to be the same again. My mother is never going to be the same again. And especially with my father, it feels like my fault. I didn't recognize the signs of a stroke earlier, and he had the signs for like 24 hours or more. So I blamed myself for a long time about my father's stroke. And to this day, he's still not the same, but he's like 90% better. So he's a lot better, which is amazing. And anyways, throughout this entire process, I was lifting a whole lot, and this was into the summer after my sophomore year. And he had a stroke, and I would kind of unintentionally kind of like fuck with him, which was it's really sick. It just wasn't okay. I'd know what he was trying to say, but I'd try to pretend like I didn't understand what he was trying to say to like get the right words out of his mouth. And that was just fucked up on my part. So like he would be able to, he'd not be able to think about like a certain word or a phrase, and I would just like not understand. And he's like, you know what I mean? I'm like, no, I don't. Just fuck with him, and it wasn't okay. But anyways, he ran out of money, and considering his stroke, and considering he had full custody, ordered by the court, it wasn't a great position to be in. So my uncle, Stephen, who I had never had this relationship with my entire life, comes in and he's like, why don't you guys come out and move to Colorado? My dad's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, because I'm an influenced minor. So talking to my uncle, my mom's brother, and Randy is like, what the fuck you doing? Why the fuck you packing up moving to Colorado? And I'm like, my dad has a stroke, this, that, whatever. He's like, no, that doesn't make any fucking sense, whatever. Your uncle's never been in your life, your entire life. And he's right. But anyways, long story short, we moved to Colorado. And we moved July of 2021. Into a cow town, kind of north of Denver a little bit. So that's where I went to high school. So moved into that town, started 11th grade in this high school in Colorado, and still had no friends. It was, again, the same process for the past 2 years, all over again. And I'm like, I need to start something. I need to do something with my life. I don't know what I want to do. I had thoughts about joining the military, maybe because of my dad. I had thoughts of becoming a pilot or doing spec ops. I'd wanted to go in the NFL, but considering I was 5'7", 150 pounds, it wasn't very likely, considering I was also very bad at football. Wanted to join the UFC, but hadn't done martial arts in 3 years. And I was stressing about like what I'm going to do with my life, where I'm going to move. Am I going to have a girlfriend? Am I going to be lonely my whole life? Am I going to have any friends? Like, just kept spiraling every single day. And I still do. I can't lie about that. But 11th grade, I decided to, actually this was 12th grade. 11th grade, I got a girlfriend, which was amazing. And she really helped get me through all of high school. Loved her to death, great person. I decided to break up with her in October of 2023 just because I lost feelings for her. But she was amazing. Her parents were great. I have no complaints about her, and I wish her well. But went through high school, still didn't know what I wanted to do. Did football, and for 11th grade, we went to the state champions in Colorado, played at the Denver Broncos Stadium. Lost, unfortunately, but we were the state runner-ups, which was awesome, and I got to experience that, which is great. And into 11th grade, May of 11th grade, like the last month, I was like, you know what? I was talking to my buddy back from Massachusetts who was the only friend I'd had like my entire middle school and high school career, he's the only one who had my back. And I talked to him, and I'm like, why don't we just start a business? We've been watching all of these Alex Hormozy videos for the longest time, and I'm like, well, we need to do something. So we brainstormed a logo, a name, a business concept, and we decided to do like a drop shipping clothing brand. And it didn't do very well, but we tried. So from May of 2021 to December of 2022, we had run this clothing brand. Actually, no, it was 2023. May of 2021 to December of 2023. No, that's not right either. May of 2022 to December of 2023. That makes more sense. Yeah, so we ran this brand end of 11th grade, May of 2022 to December of 2023. After I went into college, I stopped it there. And it didn't do very good. We tried to make it work, but just wasn't picking up. We had too much competition, and it takes a lot more time than that to build up a proper brand and an identity. And we didn't have the quality materials we could use or access or suppliers. We were just doing drop shipping because we were broke high school / college kids. And throughout this process, I was working at King Soopers, just a local grocery store, and building up some money, although not very much. I was reading a lot. I was still lifting every single day. Still had my girlfriend, and then she moved on to her college. And then after we graduated in August of 2023, we graduated in May of 2023, I'm sorry. And then she went on to her university, also in Colorado, different one though, in August of 2023. And I moved on to CU Boulder, also later August in 2023. And I had wanted to just kind of like get the college experience. My uncle and some people in my family were like, get the college experience, like enjoy your college years, enjoy your 20s. I'm like, okay. So I also started to lose feelings for her, so I decided to break things up. And I had my fair share of kind of fucking around and enjoying the college experience and partying for a little bit. And that went on from about November to like March, I think. And throughout that entire period, I was just super lost and super depressed my freshman year of college. And it was very difficult for me because, I was regretting maybe breaking up with my girlfriend, and then me and my roommate weren't getting along, and I wasn't getting much sleep, and I was, far away from God, and I didn't have any connections besides my friend Cam, who I forgot to mention. I found out about at this networking event my senior year of high school, and we stayed in contact. And it was a rough first year for me at college. And then I kind of made up my mind, and I'm like, you know what? I don't like where I am. I don't like this. I don't like who I am. I don't know what I want to do. My degree is not going to get me anywhere. I'm very lonely. I have one good friend that's close to me right now, that being Cam, who just moved to Miami. And I was like, I don't like the whole college scene. I don't like partying. I don't like going out. I don't like getting drunk. I don't like smoking. I don't like fucking around. I just like working on myself, and I like building quality connections, and I like having this intimate connection with somebody instead of, faking something just to have a one-night stand. It's not for me. I've tried it, and I don't like it. And I might be called weird for that, but I quite frankly don't really care. And went off, almost finished my freshman year of college, and I started up martial arts again because I had dreams of maybe joining the UFC like I had as a kid as well, partially. And worked out 3 times a day. I did kickboxing at 6 a.m. in the morning. I went to class. I went to lift weights. And then after that, I left again, went back to martial arts and did some jiu-jitsu. So I worked out like 3 times a day, which was great. My cardio was up. I was the biggest I'd ever looked, super lean, decently happy because I was keeping my mind off a lot of things. But I was still kind of, envious and lost because this martial arts thing kind of started to fade off, considering I was paying like $200 something a month for membership, and they couldn't even let me like compete at all. I couldn't spar with people. It was all just like contact on the bag, and I was like, oh my god, this is just holding me back from my goals. So it just felt like a giant money grab, essentially. So I just quit. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to join the Marines because I want to be a Marine pilot. So I went through MEPS, and I was going to join this thing called the PLC program. Super good to go. And then I had to get a couple waivers because I have a gluten intolerance, a dairy intolerance, I have some eczema, and I had that, what's that called again? The adjustment disorder back from 2015 with my depression after my parents got divorced. That was still my record. So I couldn't pass through MEPS because of those 4 things, so I had to get waivers for those. I got waivers, and still for the longest time, I could not get into the Marines. And then a couple months ago, a recruiter calls me up again. He's like, hey, a couple more waivers, you should be good to go. And at this time, I was writing a book, and I wanted to be an author. So I was in the midst of publishing a book, and I'm like, well, I was fucking shell-shocked because you just called me after we haven't spoke for like 2 to 3 months, and I'd expected that the Marines weren't going to work out. So I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I didn't tell him that, but I was like, I'm going to write my book. So published my book this past December, which is great. And as soon as I published it, I'm like, I'm done. Like, I don't want to publish another book for a little bit again because it was a lot of work. And I'm still thinking, and I'm like, well, my degree's not going to take me anywhere. I can't get in the Marines, or I'm not going to get in the Marines. I published a book, and being an author is not going to make me any money right now, short term. I have no purpose. I'm lonely. I'm not satisfied with myself. I'm confused spiritually. I have very little connections. I'm like, what do I do? So, what happened essentially is I was thinking about, I'm going to fast forward here, and then I'm also going to push back a little bit because I missed something. What happened was I took some time down. I took some time to myself, and I'm like, what can I do with my skills? Because everyone's talking about like building up these skills and using skills because skills are the most important thing you can have, like communication, sales, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, well, I just published a book. I would say I'm a pretty good writer. So what I did was I looked up the best skills, and copywriting is one of them. And I was like, huh. So I built up this website of copywriting and ghostwriting services, and I was about to sell my services for free to the first couple of people to build up some sort of case study and get some sort of testimonials. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, well, copywriting itself probably isn't going to get me very far. I'm seeing all these guys on social media making all this crazy money. My friend Cam has 200 something thousand followers on Instagram. He's the best salesman and communicator that I know that I've ever met, and he's only 20 years old, and he just moved to Miami to get a job. And I'm like, what the fuck do I do? So, did some research, and I found out about this thing called growth operating, which was established about a year prior by this guy, I believe, in Eddie Cumberbatch, who Cam also knows. And I'm like, maybe I should get started in this. So I bought a course by this guy named Ben Bader, and it's done fine. And since then, I've just been trying to build up some kind of foundation with growth operating, because I have dreams now of many, many different things in my life that I want to do. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to have a wife and kids. I want to create things. I want to be a fucking badass. I want to create content. I want to be an intellectual. I want to read all the time. I want to have these amazing connections with people. And I feel like growth operating is the perfect start to doing that. And granted, it's been a tough road already, considering it's been already like a month and a half, almost 2 months since I bought into that course, and haven't seen too much visible success yet. But we're on the journey to greatness. And let me rewind a little bit here. Forgive me. In November, I was introduced, or Cam was introduced to this group of people. Cam was introduced to this guy named Jack. And Jack is a closer for a very big influencer clothing brand guy. And Jack introduced Cam and I to this group down in Denver of amazing individuals, all doing their own stuff. Growth operating, networking as a job, SMMA, closing, Amazon FBA, drop shipping, clothing brand, all of this stuff. And I'm like, this is what I've been fucking looking for. And to this day, I still have these connections, which is great. And one of the connections I made, his name is Avery. He also published the book, and his mentor helped me publish my book in December. And this group of people has really opened my eyes and gotten rid of this mindset that I've had for so long that I can't make friends. I can't join a specific group, but I finally found my group. It's all about just putting in the work and the reps right now. And it feels like my entire life is just kind of like unfolded beautifully. Like everything is worked out and I can't even explain it. I can't even put it into words. So I started to find some kind of faith again, and I got in touch more with my Judaism, although I'm questioning it. I'll talk about that another time. But I'm better than I've ever been. I got a business partner now with this whole growth operating thing. He does amazing funnels, and I do great copywriting work and content, and it's a great relationship. And that's me. And now, to this day, I'm just going to start posting even more and building up a very solid reputation to scale myself in all aspects of my life, monetarily, financially, spiritually, intellectually, relationally, emotionally, all these things. So, and I'd love you guys to follow along on this journey with me. And that's a wrap. So thank you guys so much for watching. That is my story. Although it's kind of pieced up, I'm not very good at storytelling, or previously I haven't told many stories, so this is like a first for me. But I plan to make it even better in the future. And again, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for next week's vlog. I'm going to release it probably on like Saturday or Sunday or something, so stay tuned, stay updated, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.